Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video. And in this one, I've got my 9.1 melee DPS tier list. And this is more of a prediction tier list. What's catching my eye? What's standing out to me? What's going to be really high risk, high reward, or totally just you want to avoid that. Don't touch that in terms of specializations for PvP. So if you're excited about 9.1 with all of the new announcements for honor talents, a ton of class changes, a bunch of interviews have been underway with main game developers, a lot of returning flavors coming back to the game, although it seems to be a little bit in the future. So right now, the best use of your time is to prepare for it. So not to toot my own horn, but watching videos like this to prepare yourself and then start leveling your characters and get them ready into the future. Of course, this is my own opinion. I encourage you to also test these classes out for yourself and to also source out other content creators to try and create the best gameplay experience for yourself. And with this one, I'm going to be covering hype, solid, average, or there's not a lot done to the spec. High risk, it could be hype, but it also could flop, and then specs that you just want to outright avoid. Let's start with Arms Warrior. Arms Warrior has been a very good spec. If in a lot of cases maybe a bit oppressive overall in PvP, at least when it comes to ranked competitive arenas. Of course, when you go into random battleground scenario, you don't have a healer, you might not be having the best experience compared to some other melee DPS that can heal themselves. But in a competitive format, it's been at the top. It's not having really anything done to it. You're going to look forward to some interesting legendaries introduced to the Covenant, such as the Night Fae, legendary that's going to increase the duration of your ancient, I believe, ancient aftermath, ancient aftershock. It's your shockwave from the Night Fae for warriors. It's going to increase the duration of it. So if you want to relive having shockwave again, you could switch over to a Night Fae warrior. Almost all of the covenants are really open and on the table for warrior in general as arms. That's what stood out to me as the next most exciting thing coming for arms warrior, which honestly really wasn't a lot compared to a lot of the other melee DPS specializations. So for me, I think that it's still going to be a strong and competitive spec, although it may even out with other specs coming up to its level, which might feel like you're going down, but in reality, it's just evening the playing field. To me, Arms Warrior is a solid pick still. It still retains all of the outplay value. You're getting a little bit of cool new stuff with legendary, so it's above the average of the boring palette place, and I would still recommend it. Assassination Rogue. We're just dumping this thing up right here at the top on hype with honor talents, introducing sharpened blade mechanics like the Arms Warrior with damage reduction improvements to itself, personal survivability buffs, mobility buffs. You're going to move more, you're going to get hit less, and you are going to be a nasty fighter. All of the covenants are really now on the table as well for Assassination, and you're likely not going to be just pigeonholed into that 100% crit legendary as it's getting nerfed, so you'll be able to expand into some new builds and try things out, so you'll have a lot more to look forward to, which is why I think it's very hype. On top of being solid and super competitive, I think it's likely to be a very top tier specialization. You definitely want to check out the Assassination Rogue. Enhancement Shaman, it's not seeing a ton of stuff. You're still likely going to be pinned into the Doom Winds legendary. And there's a lot of mortal wounds effects that are coming in onto other specializations that could inhibit your strength, which is your healing surge. Not a lot is changing, although if you do like Enhancement Shaman currently with the Chain Harvest, Zaps, and the Ascendance blast out damage, you'll still have a good time, but there's not really a lot changing for it. Remember that this isn't necessarily only a performance list. This is also just including like excitement level, like what's going to be changing to it. Is it still going to be a spec that I can play for a long time without getting bored type of approach? To me, it's somewhere in between average and solid. I don't think there's a lot coming to it that is making me stand out. It could have great synergies potentially, but I think that it'll fall off in strength because of the abundance of mortal wounds or healing reduction effects in PvP. So because of that, I think that it may shift it. Again, this is a prediction list, so I'm putting it a little bit lower. It's average. It's good. It's still all there. Complete kit. If you like that kit, then you're still going to like it. But it competitively could be falling a bit short, which prevents it from going down the solid tier. And then there's not a lot of new and exciting juice coming to it for me to really say that it's going to be super hype. But it's obviously not going to be high risk, and it's not something you should avoid. It's a good spec. Feral Druid now, on the other hand, is getting mortal wounds. provided to itself through honor talents, so it's going to be a very competitive spec because it brings the healing of the enhanced with shaman, brings the unlimited mobility that the enhanced with shaman doesn't have, brings the cyclone utility that prevents healing and it really aids in crowd control, and its covenants, the Necrolord covenant, which seems to be where most of the feral druids in PvP are ending up, is getting buffed, and you're going to be getting a ton of mastery. So you're going to be looking forward to a whole bunch of more damage, a mortal wounds effect that you've never had for new and exciting gameplay, and then everything else that you really loved before, and you were already a good spec. So I mean, I feel like it goes without saying that this feral druid is going to be pretty hype when it comes to 9.1. Frost Death Knight, you're getting your honor talents kind of rearranged. Heartstop Aura is being changed rather than the cooldown reduction. I think that it was likely just really not fun to interact with, and it was bugging a lot of spells out and making their cooldowns 4 hours long. So I'm almost not surprised to see that get out of there. It's getting replaced with something that will help you with range DPS that are trying to crowd control your healer. But it's not really getting overhauled. It's still kind of just the grip and chill streak and burst down. And with the increase of mortal wounds effects on a lot of classes, preventing your own self-sustainability with Death Strike, I think that you're going to struggle with the Frost Death Knight. You do have good synergies, but maybe not the best with things like the Arms Warrior. Definitely not the Assassination Rogue. Feral Druids probably don't want you. So you're not really synergizing with what I'm expecting to be strong upcoming specializations in 9.1. And I do actually worry quite a lot about Death Knight as a whole, whether it be Frost or Unholy. Frost will still work, right? Because you'll get the grip and your slappy hands with the Necrolord Covenant. Not a lot of new Covenant stuff for Death Knight either. Although, I mean, Necrolord one's cool in itself, but you're not getting to expand like Rogues or Warriors are. So there's nothing really exciting there. I don't really see any legendaries standing out. You still want that Cindergosa AoE stun because it just synergizes so well with your kit. And to me personally, Frost Decay can get repetitive. Obviously, if you like it, you dig it, you should stick to it. But for myself, it's a spec that if I were to pick up as a main, I see myself getting bored of it pretty quickly. And there's not enough in terms of new honor talents yet that we haven't seen yet, or any sort of creative builds that is deterring from the path that it's had and that it's had for a long time. I mean, that dragon is cool, right? Shooting out the Cindergosa dragon and stunning the whole team. That thing is awesome. That alone would make me want to play a Frost Death Knight, but it's not new for 9.1. And this is a prediction list for 9.1. So for me, I would almost say, like, Frost Death Knight I think will work. It'll still be able to do burst damage, so maybe it's where we put it on the average tier. I would imagine it's going to be worse than Enhancement Shaman, but it does still have those old synergies going for it with things like Arms Warrior and Windwalker. So I think that holds it up. Its ability to group things together and burst them down, and that's still likely to be an important part of the meta. I think it will work. So it's not completely a void spec, but it doesn't have anything going for it really. Now, Fury Warrior to me is high risk. It could be super hype, but it's high risk. And I say that because Fury Warrior has just been a really hit or miss and more often miss spec in the history of the game that I'm slightly biased and kind of scarred to seeing it have any potential. Although it's going to have the highest mortal wounds effect available in the game at 60% on your rampage. This is where the high risk comes in, right? Like, that sounds absolutely insane. Get a 60% MS, combo that in with an Enhancement Shaman with their Ascendance Burst damage, or Boomkin even maybe with their Star Surges. You might be able to overthrow Arms Warrior. That's why it's high risk. It could overthrow Arms Warrior, but based on its history and its track record, I struggle to really lock myself into recommending it personally overall. But if you want to take that risk, or you want to flip over, the good thing is you share a lot of gear with Arms. You just take one weapon off and you're back to Arms. You're good to go. You probably I would imagine, play the same covenants as Arms, so you're not going to be falling too far behind, although you will likely need to unlock a legendary for Fury Warrior specifically over Arms. Let's see, we just wanted to do Sephuz. The Sephuz doesn't seem like that. It could be okay for Fury. I know a lot of Arms Warriors have it, but they're mostly going the Exploiter. But yeah, so Fury is super high risk. It could either be the most insane thing ever, dominates everything, which is why I don't want to put it on a void and look like I'm totally off base with this one. But based on its track record, I go into it prepared to go back to Arms. I think is more of a fair assessment. Now, Demon Hunter is just getting out flat out damage buffs, right? 15% damage, or I think it translates out to 4% overall damage, but 15% on its single target abilities, which is going to help it out a lot because right now it's basically just a walking the hunt. it runs around with a bunch of defensive cooldowns, pressing the hunt, hoping it kills something, and then outside of that, it's not doing too much. But now the not doing so much part is probably going to be a lot better, and you do bring in mortal wounds, and we've seen Demon Hunter more and more and more, so these buffs should put you in a solid place. I'm not super hyped up about it to put it onto the hype tier, but I think that it will be a much stronger and competitive spec. And if Demon Hunter is something that you've been wanting to play, it's fallen off, you put it on the back burner, you haven't looked at it, 9.1 is definitely the time to get back on it. But there's not so much to it that I'm going, oh wow, it's a completely new thing to check out, or a new build, or some interesting comp synergies. I think it's more likely going to be the same, but you'll just be more competitive, and you'll feel better overall in your experience for PvP. So it's a solid pick in my mind as a prediction for 9.1. Outlaw Rogue, this is a really hard one. So based on my assessment of the changes is that they want to make it into Gangplank. And if you haven't played League of Legends, Gangplank is a pirate, and he eats oranges, I think, and he heals himself, and he's really beefy, and he's kind of a beefy pirate rogue. That seems to be the approach that they're taking for Outlaw. So your Crimson Vials heal more, and you're more about hack and slash and staying in the fight and beating people up. Which, when I thought about it the first time, I was like, this doesn't seem like a rogue. But then I was like, it kind of seems like a pirate, though. And it fits the Outlaw theme of being a pirate. It could be cool. It's a completely different way of thinking about rogue, and you'd have to go into it with that approach, right? All of the tuning numbers around its damage, it seemed like a ton of them. It seemed really hard to be like, oh wow, that's going to be good, right? It's like you look at Fury Warrior and you're like, wow, 60% MS, that thing could be really good. But I looked at Outlaw Rogue and I'm like, what are all of these things? Most of Outlaw Rogue's utility is also being stolen away and given to Assassination and Subtlety. Things like Tricks of the Trade are just making rogue wide, and things like Dismantle, so disarming targets, is being made rogue wide. So you're actually losing out some utility. But if the game ends up about just being hack and slash, zug, with these mortal wounds effects and getting in there and getting dirty, and Outlaw is sturdy enough to stand up to that, it could work out. It's hard to get hype about something just being durable, isn't it, though? When you get hype about Assassination, like, yeah, that thing's gonna kill people really fast, or Fury Warrior, that's gonna blast people. I'm thinking Outlaw Rogue could be really hype because it's just immortal. Like, it could be really good, which is why I don't want to say avoid it. So I think it's fair to say it's like a high risk. And Outlaw Rogue also doesn't have the best track record. They're doing something completely different with it, which to me, as I've explained, could either just be really awesome, super strong, or just fall flat and not really feel like with the experience that you're looking for. But that's my assessment of it, is that it's more of like the Gangplank, the brawler kind of rogue spec. If you want to go after something like that, it's completely different, right? Which is kind of hype to it. So I think that prevents it from being the avoid spec, something completely different. If you want to explore that avenue as a rogue, if you're tired of being the dagger in the back, sneaky kind of rogue, you can just be the orange eating pirate and go arg. Now, Rep Paladin, I think it's fair to say that Rep Paladin is still, do we say it's hype? It's actually getting a ton of stuff, like the legendary that's going to allow your Divine Toll to proc every 10 seconds after you cast it one time. That's going to be insane. You're just going to be spamming out hammers everywhere. Downside is these mortal wound effects might be really negatively impacting you. Frost Mage is going to be very powerful based on the changes that I've seen to it. You don't like mages, you don't like casters, you don't like these mortal wounds effects, reducing your healing, but that Divine Toll legendary looks so crazy. That's pretty hype. I mean, Rep Paladins are smacking people, and now they're going to smack people twice as much, 4 times as much. It's pretty hype. I think Rep Paladin is probably going to be pretty hype. It's getting, unlike a lot of the solid specs, right? It's getting that extra layer. It's expanding on the current iteration of its Shadowlands self and expanding into this even more crazy part. Whereas Arms Warrior and Demon Hunter is like, they're having their weaknesses shored up, but I'm not super hype about it going up and above where it is. So I think it's hype. Probably the least hype of all the hype, but hype, if that makes sense. Subtlety Rogue. This spec is basically being locked into a one-trick, pigeonholed, one-shot build at the moment to be viable. So if you like that, you like the one-hit wonder, just waiting for that perfect moment, trying to line it up perfectly and just go straight down the middle and get the kill, you'll like that type of gameplay. But your ability to win outside of this is going to be very challenging. You'll be a good noob stomper if you want to get fully decked out and just do some low-rated arenas or some random battleground content and assassinate people. I think you'll have a very strong format there. You're getting buffed a ton defensively and in terms of mobility. I think that you're probably going to be above Frost Death Knight Enhancement Shaman just because you can still synergize so heavily with mages, and Mage Rogue is just a prevalent comp, right? It's World of Warcraft. You can't those are just two sides of the same coin, Rogue Mage and World of Warcraft. So for me, it's solid. I'm not super hype about it because it's still the same thing. It's still just about going for the shadowy duel, shadow blades, zaps, but you're going to move faster. You're going to be more sturdy. So you're going to be a solid pick still, but there's no, it's not like I'm super hype about getting dismantle, although that does help you kill a lot of high priority targets like warriors, removing their weapons when you go for the kill to prevent their defensive cooldowns. I'm not super hyped up about it particularly. Maybe the distract talent with where you throw an image, you teleport to the image. That thing could be cool. Is that hype? It's the same kind of thing, right? I feel like we all get super excited when it's like big damage, and we're like, that's the only thing that's hype. Oh, that thing's going to be tanky. It's not really hype, even though it means it could be super competitive. Or, yeah, that rogue gets to move around a little bit more and teleport around a corner. It's kind of cool. It's just solid to me. We've talked about it. It's just solid to me. If you want to check out these changes specifically, I'll have a link to the video at the end so you can go into them into detail. I'm more or less summarizing them here. Survival Hunter. I think that this is a well-built specialization. It's super unique, but it's not new anymore. Right? Like, it's been around the block a few times since its inception in Legion as being a melee DPS. I've always thought of it as the highest skill cap hunter spec, just in terms of keybind management, rotation, needing to deal with the risks that melee DPS bring as opposed to ranged DPS. It's pretty easy to say it's more complicated than Beast Mastery Hunter when you compare it to Beast Mastery Hunter, but I haven't seen anything that's standing out really to me. It's a good spec. You'll play jungle, you play with feral druids and priests. You'll do well in those comps, I would imagine. Although you're probably replaced by Beast Mastery Hunters in terms of competitiveness. I want to say avoid it unless like, again, I'm not putting it here based on its performance, although you could allocate it based on performance here as well. I think it's kind of fair actually to put survival here. But it seems weird, right? Because I think that it is a well-designed spec. It's super unique. But the problem is competitively, it's just inferior. It doesn't do as much damage. It has more significant weaknesses than Beast Mastery. Its synergies with classes outside of Feral Druid is pretty much non-existent. And you're not really getting anything new or exciting. So while it is a really well put together spec, it's lacking competitiveness. And it's not getting anything that's like, whoa, maybe it will. I've seen some kind of leaked stuff where it looks like they're maybe giving hunters honor talents, but if they give it to all of them, then it's like, well, then they all get it, and just BM's more happy about it. So I think survival's more of a competitive issue than anything, although I run across it very rarely on the ladder, and it seems strong in its comp, Feral Priest. You still probably just want to be Beast Mastery. That's the main problem. So for me personally, unless you're diehard survival hunter, you like it, you want to go after it, it is just more of the same. For this list, I think it's fair to put it there, at least for my own assessment, but I wanted to add more to it than just, oh, what? He said avoid it. Now, Unholy Death Knight, this is another one I think that we're going to have to put in the avoid pool. Unholy Death Knight does not stand up to the same type of durability level as warriors, now rogues, paladins, shamans, the healing output of ferals. It just can't keep up with the durability level. And its burst damage is kind of predictable. It takes a lot of global cooldowns to get all your pets rolling. The pets are crowd controllable. It's pretty predictable. The Necrotic Strike buff, I think, was a good direction, but I don't think it's been buffed enough. And to me, I feel like Unholy Death Knight should be in the place of just, it's the counter to all of this healing. That's where it fits into place. Maybe its weakness, again, is to range DPS or something. But it hasn't been buffed enough, and it's not getting anything new and exciting. And I just watched Preach's interview with Ian, and they're going to nerf anti-magic zone for raids. Hopefully they said they're going to nerf it in a way that it wouldn't be as affected in other content like dungeons and PvP, but it's possible that it could. So I really would like to see more stuff for Unholy and have a distinct place for itself in the meta as like that single target train that just absorbs healing effects. And if it's on you, like, you're terrified of this thing being on you, because it's just not, right? And if Death Knight isn't that, then it's really just nothing. It's just, you're just walking around. So for me, I would say avoid Unholy Death Knight at this point. If they do more updates, again, I'll update this list. But currently, I would say avoid Unholy Death Knight. Windwalker Monk. Windwalker Monk has been surprisingly kind of just falling off. It's still very terrifying. It's still very terrifying when it gets all of its cooldowns out. With its Storm, Earth, and Fire, and with its Zwen, it's still quite a force to be reckoned with. but we don't see it nearly as much, I think, as Arms Warrior or Rep Paladin on the ladder or in the highest level competitive play anymore. Seems like it's fallen off a lot. And it doesn't appear to be getting anything. I'm trying to recall again, but I'm pretty sure it's not getting anything insane. Its counterpart, Mistweaver, is getting a lot, but Windwalker isn't really getting stuff that I'm like, whoa, super stoked to check out this new slightly improvement on the iteration of the Windwalker, or this completely new thing that's come out of left field. So for me, I'd say it's average. Maybe it's like the best of the average. Maybe slightly. It's probably still a solid pick. Do we say it's solid? I feel like it's somewhere in between. Maybe I should have had an in-between point here. In between average and solid. It's a tough one to lock down. You're still the same old gameplay that you're going to like. The grips and triple stuns, playing with mages, trying to run away, roll away, set up paralyzed kills. The core of the class is still the same kind of like high mobility, avoid getting attacked type of kind of ninja style play. So if you're into that, it's not really changing. It's still going to be competitive, but there's nothing that's like, whoa, it's super hype. Based on tournaments and watching it play out, it seems like it's falling off. And with other mortal wounds effects to reduce its own self-sustainability, because it's a hybrid, I could see it falling off even further. And with rogues getting strong in particular, I could see it falling off. So this, I think it's probably fair to say that it's going to be average in 9.1 as a prediction. But what do you think? I'd love to hear in the comments down below. Do you think my assessment is totally off base here? Am I completely incorrect on what I've said? And once again, check out the video linked at the end that goes into detail of all these changes if you really want to be as prepared as possible for 9.1 in terms of getting your mains or your alts, because it seems like it's still a bit of the ways in the future. So now is the time to get the character up to speed. And then when these changes come in, really just get to bite in. Other than that, subscribe to the channel if you're not. If you like these types of videos and you want to be updated, it helps my channel out greatly, so I do appreciate it. And thank you everybody that has subscribed and has to hear me say this even though you are already subscribed. But if you would, I would greatly appreciate it. Other than that, I will see you in the next video. Thank you very much for watching.